Hello, dear listeners. If you're new here, we're Margin Mavens, and we are obsessed with writing in our books and sharing our thoughts with you guys. In this episode, we are talking about Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, a story that brings in elements from stories like The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe and The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Based in the 1950s Mexico, we meet Noemi, a socialite living with her father in Mexico City, who is sent to high place in the Mexico countryside after a startling letter by her newly-wed cousin Catalina. She ventures into unknown territories and finds things are much worse than anyone could have guessed. As usual, this video will contain spoilers, so please keep that in mind before listening. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how do we feel?
I still love this book with all my heart and soul. Will never not love this book with all my heart and soul. Don't know why it got so much crap.
Did
Like
it?
there were a lot of I didn't read it for the first time for the longest time after I got it because so many people were like, "Oh, it was so disappointing. Like it wasn't that good." Blah blah blah. And then I was like, "You know what? Let me judge for myself." And I devoured that book. And then I was like, I'm gonna stop listening to what other people say because I loved it. And Silvia Moreno-Garcia does no wrong for me ever.
Yeah, I think I try not to look at critiques
Mm-hmm.
because I know that I'll not
Mm-hmm. It will affect the
yeah.
your opinion whether you
Mhm.
realize it or not. Yep.
Mhm. Mhm. So we meet Noemi. She is a girl that is built for partying and having fun, right? She's living a very lavish life because of her dad, but she is not a, brain dead heroine. She is in school. She wants to get a master's in anthropology.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sylvia does a really good job within the first 5 pages, right? Of really introducing the kind of fun side of
Noemi.
Noemi. And we see that
Mm-hmm.
she is kind of on a date with some guy who I don't remember his name because he's in.
Hugo.
Yeah. So she's on a date with some guy, and you kind of see that banter between them. You see that she's very comfortable in that environment. She knows that her father is upset. He's called her home, right? And she's assuming it's because of the guy that she's hanging out with. So she's like, oh, it's a low stakes issue. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get home. It'll be solved. And her dad very quickly is like, hey, something's going on with your cousin. And she's like, what's going on with Catalina? Like, we haven't seen her in a while. She just got married. And he then shows her a letter where Catalina is very quickly shown to be a little unstable, right? We don't know anything other
Right.
than the fact that she is basically asking for help. She wants um
There's something going
there's
on.
something going on, and Noemi's father is very confused, right? It's also very
Mm-hmm.
quickly shown that there is this kind of hierarchy within Mexican society, right? And so
Right.
he's coming out of caring for the cousin, but also out of a kind of pride of we are the Tabotas.
Reputation. Yeah.
We should not be nothing should be happening to her. They are lucky to have her. Because as of that point, his family, the Doyles, right? They're not, you know,
They don't have anything
they don't really
like
have anything. And so he takes it as a matter of, how dare they do this? And so Noemi gets kind of shipped off to high place, and very quickly things are shown to not be super great, right? So
Mhm.
when she gets picked up by a man named Francis, who is the youngest sibling or youngest. Is he a
Cousin.
sibling? Yeah, he's the
Yeah.
youngest son, right? And so he is kind of immediately kind of smitten with her. She is not, right? She's like, "Oh, he kind of looks pretty ordinary. There's nothing really
Yeah.
sticking out about him."
He's like nerdy, geeky, the
Yeah.
typical kitty boy
Yeah.
twink. Yeah.
Not
Ain't
anything that she
ain't much
was
going on with him.
yeah, not anything
Yeah.
that she was really used to being like interested in because she's used to going after the,
Pretty
suave,
boys.
pretty boys. Okay. So Catalina and Noemi have obviously known each other their entire lives, right? And so Noemi is very used to Catalina's kind of jovial attitude, kind of the motherly
Mhm.
role when it comes to
Yep.
Noemi. And so when she finally gets to High Place, she meets the governess is what I'm going to call her, but she is the person that's running the
Florence.
whole house.
Yes.
And her name is Florence, and she is cold. She never makes an effort to like get Noemi to like her, which I find kind of
No.
interesting because everybody else does, right? Everybody else in the house makes some sort of effort to get Noemi to trust them, whereas she the entire time is like, it does not matter to me if you trust me or not. And she kind of leans into like a power play the entire time.
Yeah.
So Catalina's husband, Virgil, which, first off, nobody named Virgil is going to be a man that I trust.
Not from here on out. No.
Ever. Ever. Like, I heard his name was Virgil, and I was like, okay, there's Virgil and there's Francis. One of them is going to be the one I trust more,
Right.
just based on name. And this is where we kind of start seeing those play ins to the Yellow Wallpaper, right? Which is a short story based in like Victorian times, basically where a woman is gaslit and she is like not feeling very well. She has, something going on, right? Which up to many debates about what that thing is, but she has something going on and everybody around her
Mhm.
is like, "Oh, like you're good. Like you're just kind of kooky. You're a little hysterical. We're going to leave you in this room. You'll get some rest. The
You'll be
isolation
fine.
will be good for you, right?" And over the course of the book or the story, she does actually go a bit crazy, right? And she has this very like, if you're gonna say I'm crazy, I'm gonna act crazy. And she starts
Mhm.
eating the yellow wallpaper. Like they come into the room at one point, she's literally like in the wall. Like it's a very fun story to read if you haven't. I've gone over it with my students multiple times. It's super fun. But we start seeing those elements coming in because Virgil is very much like, your cousin is sick. We have a doctor that comes in. She takes her
Mhm.
medicine. She needs rest. You cannot bother her, yada, yada, yada. And Noemi's like, okay, but like tuberculosis, like
Yeah.
she's acting very crazy for tuberculosis.
She's not acting like herself, and it's not just
Yeah.
whatever illness you've labeled
And
her with.
tuberculosis, if I'm not mistaken, is like very like cough heavy. It makes them not able to breathe. Right? And Catalina does not show any symptoms of that. Like we're never told like, oh, Catalina's coughing a lot, like the person that
Mhm.
is coughing a lot and having these issues is the patriarch, right? And we'll get into his nasty butt in a second, but we don't get any symptoms of that. And so Noemi is very quickly like, something else is wrong. I want a second opinion, right? And they're
Mhm.
like, ha ha ha. Good luck finding that, right? We have
Right.
a family doctor who's been with us for generations, yada,
Right.
yada, yada. And so she gets Francis to take her into
Bring her to
town.
town. Yep.
But it's a very or no,
Clandestine?
I think the first time she goes, she actually drives herself.
Yes.
Because she talks Francis into letting her drive and she goes and she meets the town doctor, right? Which he is fun. I, for a moment, thought he was going to be a love interest. But I
Mhm.
like him. He's very noble. He's very, I was raised in these parts. When I became a doctor, I knew I wanted to come back to be able to help the people because there's not much here. The town used to be a mining town, and then the mines were destroyed in an explosion or whatever story they gave. And so they have not been able to use the mine since.
Mhm.
And she basically begs him, like, hey, will you please come in and talk to my cousin? And he's like, ugh, I am not really welcomed in High Place, and I don't
Right.
really want to push that.
Right.
Um,
But he does it anyway.
but he does it anyway, because Noemi, as you'll see, kind of gets her way
A lot.
a lot throughout this book, right? Even
She knows
like
how to play the field to
Yeah.
get what she
And so
wants.
even Virgil, right, who is pretty much antagonistic to her more often than not. There's moments where he's trying to get her favor and get her to trust him, but more often than not, he is okay with being cold
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like telling her how it is. He even calls her out and it's like, "Oh, you're not used to hearing no." And he says it like it's a bad thing, but then he also gives in to her. So
Yeah,
not sure what his play there was. He's not the brightest bulb in the store.
he's truly not.
And so doctor comes in and is like, "Okay, I also agree that the way your cousin is acting is not very akin to tuberculosis. So you should probably bring a psychiatrist into this, right?" And the family is like, "No, no psychiatrist. We cannot, whatever." And we're constantly like, "Okay, why aren't they letting other people in this place?"
Right.
And going into the patriarch, right? I forgot his name. Howard. I had the page open apparently. Um his name is Howard Doyle, right? And he
Of
is
course
this
it is.
decrepit, ugly, sick old man that everybody else is like waiting on hand and foot. They're not allowed to talk at dinner because his
He
ears are
needs silence.
sensitive and
Yeah.
yada yada yada. And like this man creeped me out from the get-go, right? So
Yes.
rightfully so, because he first conversation is bringing in the topic of eugenics, right?
Eugenics. Yeah.
Not really a conversation starter,
No.
especially if you're pro eugenics, like.
Yep.
So for those who are not aware, eugenics is in basis terms the idea that some people's genes are better than others, and so only the people with the better genes should be able to have kids and continue the human
Mm-hmm.
race, right? In
Mm-hmm.
order to get those better genes, right? That's the basic form of it. But he very quickly is like, "Oh, you are a lot darker than your cousin," which
Yeah.
a
It's a lot of
wild
racism.
a wild conversation
A
starter.
lot of racism. Just
And she is going into like anthropology. This is not somebody that is like uneducated. So she immediately clocks it and is like, "Oh my god, this is a eugenics man." And throughout the book you kind of get more um like info about eugenics and how far they really believe in it. They have books on it. They they're just an icky little bunch. Um the stakes kind of get amped up because she starts hanging out with Francis more, right? And he is
yeah.
very honest with her, but doesn't tell her everything. Like if she asks him a question, he answers her and he's very upfront about his feelings about things, but he obviously is not telling her the underlying, cause or
Story.
issue.
Yeah.
And so we find out that he's really into art. He really likes making mushroom prints. He likes pressing flowers. He's a delicate little soul
He's a naive little boy.
in a really terrible situation. And
Yeah.
so they slowly start getting closer and she starts seeing him more in a romantic light.
Softer,
Yeah.
yes. In a
And
softer, more positive light.
because I mean, I think in those circumstances it'd be hard not to, because you're going through something that's really mentally taxing and you have like this one golden light.
Yes.
Um and so that's really nice. And then Catalina at one point asks a favor of her and says, "Hey, can you
Mhm.
go into town and get me a tincture from the town healer? It helps me sleep." And Noemi, being the ride or die cousin she is like, "Yeah, for sure. I can do that." And it is through this healer, Martha, that we are able to get a lot of backstory on the family that the family would not be telling us, right? So we find
Right.
out that there was a lady in the family who she goes and she murders a decent amount of people, tries to kill the patriarch, does not, ends up killing herself. Um, and that obviously adds in a lot of spooky undertones to the thing because we're like, okay, people are being murdered here and no one is mentioning it. And we find out that Catalina, or that the house and the family is cursed, right?
Right.
The healer's very like, "Oh, this tincture is going to help her sleep," but it's not gonna
needs to get
solve
out
the
of the house.
problem. And
That family cursed.
yeah,
Get away
family
from
family
them.
bad. And so gives her like an evil eye bracelet. Very kind lady. And so Noemi goes home or goes back to High
Mhm.
Place, gives her cousin this tincture. Her cousin is very excited, takes a lot more of it than she should have. Because I
Yes.
once we find out more, I think it was a very like, oh, this seemed to be helping. Let me take a lot of it.
Yes.
And we find out that this tincture, she should actually be taking it slowly and
Yes.
you know,
A more moderate dose rather
yeah,
than like a big old gulp of
yep.
it,
The
because
desperation was evident. And so she ends up having
having
a
a
seizure.
seizure.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm. Um,
Which of course sets everybody off. And then Noemi kind of gets in trouble and is dealing with a lot of guilt
mhm,
for hurting her cousin like that.
mhm, mhm.
Which we then find out later is from Francis. It's like, yeah, that happened before. Like,
Yeah.
that
We
wasn't your fault. It happened before.
yeah, like your cousin knew what was gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I know. I know. And then this book ramps it up to an 11
Yeah, Kayla, you can take
real
over
fast.
the ramping.
So, just a couple trigger warnings before we continue. There's a lot of dubious consent in this book that I didn't remember the first time I read it, but upon rereading it, I was like, ooh, that's gross.
That's icky.
It's very icky. And it's still, and maybe this is just me, but like it's still a little foggy to me what was actually real life and what was not fantasy, but like hallucinatory, I guess. So Noemi starts to have really weird dreams. She sees like this golden light. She starts to see like mold moving on the walls and
Mhm.
all of this stuff. And the things really start getting wild when she has this weird dream question mark
Mhm.
of Virgil while
Yeah.
she's in the bath.
Yeah.
And it's really, really gross and really, really grimy. And he's like hitting on her, and she like doesn't want it, but she does want it. And it's just like a really uncomfortable
Yeah, it's an uncomfy scene.
scene.
I think that it was very much like Noemi's actual thoughts being like, I don't want this. And then that gloom and
Hmm.
that everything coming in and being like, you do want this. Because I think
Hmm.
like Sylvia does a really good job of kind of in those moments showing Noemi's initial thoughts of like, I don't want this. This is gross. To like, as the scene progresses, she starts
Dresses.
going like,
Yeah.
why didn't I want this? And
Want this. Yes. I want more. Like
yeah,
more of
and so you
this.
see that like descent into being controlled and manipulated and stuff.
Yeah. And as the time goes on, she starts to realize that there's definitely something else happening within the house and with, more importantly, with the Doyle family. She starts having these like hallucinatory dreams of a woman giving birth to some like snake eel
Mm,
thing, and then yeah, it's
mm-mm.
gross. And then she's dreaming about the person who murdered a bunch of people in the house, Ruth. Um, Come to find out, like, there was when she goes back to Martha to talk with her, find out that the miners had been on strike because Doyle had been a piece of poop and decided to like
Start
cheat
taking their
essentially
yeah.
cheat them out of their rightful pay.
They were used to partidos, so
Yes.
whatever they got, they also got a little piece of silver for their pay. He
Hmm.
started taking that away, and they were like, "We don't like this," and so they went on a
So they went on
strike.
strike.
Mhm,
And the strike leader ended up being murdered.
mhm.
Well, he disappeared.
Mm.
He died.
Yeah, the strike leader got murdered. It was the
He
other guy.
died.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really sure if it was murder, like if the Doyle had some hand in it or not. Come to find out, the strike leader also had a son, Benito. And Benito and Ruth had fallen in love. And this is where the eugenics piece comes in.
Yep.
Because that can't happen. A Doyle can't be messing around with
so it's
people
also,
that are beneath them.
Yeah, it's also important to note the lengths that this patriarch went, right? So when he came over,
No, you're not. He came over with one wife, right? And then she had a younger sister, and after his first wife died, when the younger sister came of age, he married her, which she continued the line. But his first wife is, quote, mother.
Not the mother that the queers
Not the mother of the
would
children.
I was gonna say not mother like when the queers say like,
Oh, no,
she's
no, no.
mother.
No.
Not like that.
No, not like that. So as the story continues to unfold, Noemi discovers that that Howard Doyle had essentially made a deal with a group of indigenous people to live with them, and they had this mushroom-esque thing that they used in healing, and like they used it in small doses to heal and like provide support and what have you for medicinal reasons. And Howard Doyle, being the eugenist white supremacist that he is, was like, I could do better than that, as most white men do. So basically he like slaughtered their priests, took oh my god, who was she? Like the leader's daughter. Can't exactly remember what the leader's name was if we ever learn that. And then just left. And eventually, what this woman did was kickstart the process for Howard Doyle to just live
Forever,
an unending
never,
life.
never.
Yeah.
Yay.
Like a few hundred years.
Yeah.
So this all comes to a head because when Ruth attempted to murder him, he was severely damaged, and a lot of his energy went into healing himself because at the time, Virgil was just un bebé, and Howard wasn't about to use Virgil to continue his life.
Yeah, so to be clear, Howard has basically been taking the body of a son when it is ready to continue his lifespan.
His own son.
His own
son. Yes. Virgil. So, Virgil is his son. Florence is his
sister.
Yep. Yep. Because Florence is Virgil's aunt, and Francis is Florence's son.
Yep.
And thus Virgil's cousin, and thus Howard's nephew. So, boy howdy. So basically, what ends up happening is once Noemi discovers all of this,
she's like, I'm leaving.
She's
dude.
stuck. Yeah, she's decided that she's done. She's leaving. But they can't have her leave.
Yeah, I would have had bells go off in my brain if suddenly this family who's been giving me crap is like, yeah, let's just have like a last dinner together. You know, I'd be like, oh no, guys, I don't like you enough for this.
I'm all set with that.
So you get arguably one of the grossest scenes.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is Howard essentially forces Noemi to kiss him, and there's like this gross, like,
It's a goo, guys. It's goo.
I don't want to even
Yeah.
recount this scene,
But
but it's gross.
he fast forwards the process of her becoming
Yes.
one with the family in the house, and
Yes.
it's all mushrooms, guys. It's all
Yes.
mushrooms. It's a fungus, it's mold, it's all icky and
Yeah,
gross.
spores. Like, it's just, you're infected.
Get some bleach to it. Like,
Burn it down. So to keep her there, Howard basically speeds up the process by infecting her directly with his mouth, which is really gross. And since Virgil is technically already married to Catalina, Noemi is to be married off to Francis. And you get this really cute, like, scene between, like, multiple scenes between Francis and Noemi, just like Francis telling her what's safe to eat.
Yep, love
so
it.
that she's not
They start speaking
being
in Spanish because Howard doesn't know Spanish, because once again,
nobody knows
eugenics.
Spanish.
Why would any of them learn Spanish?
But Francis's father taught him Spanish, and he was able to continue using it, working with the doctor and like all of that. So there's a lot of really cute. It's so weird because in the midst of all this gross. Icky,
Francis is great.
Francis is just like this little tiny beacon of light that's like, hey, like, we can get through this together. It basically, like, I promise, I will keep you safe. Like, I won't let anything bad happen to you. Like, this, that, and the other thing. So they get married. Spoiler alert. Although I'm not even sure technically it's a legal marriage, because I don't think Howard Doyle. Yeah, it's just Howard being like, y'all are married. Congratulations. So they are separated. And while Noemi is in her room, Francis ends up being locked in his room. So Virgil comes in to Noemi's room to basically play the part of the groom on a wedding night. And, like, Virgil's kind of a butthead.
He's
not
the
kind of.
worst.
He is the worst. He's almost
like, his big point, and once again it comes down to pride, right? Because he is 100% also on that eugenics train. Like, he's like, oh, Noemi's more exotic, yada yada yada, right? But he is upset and jealous that she has chosen Francis, right?
Yeah, that she has shown an affinity and a care
towards
for Francis when he's right there, and she even describes Virgil as being the more attractive of the two men.
Looking.
Yes.
And so he's very upset with that. And so he even, like, Francis at one point is like, she's gonna be my wife, back off. You know, and during the, like, catalytic scene where they're all everything's coming to a head, right? Virgil's like, hey, no worries, we can both have her. Like, it's no big deal. And just like, I'm all for wide choose and
this
poly,
is not the wide choose that we want.
This is not the wide choose. Sylvia tried to start giving me what I wanted, and I went, no, thank you.
No, thank you. You could keep that.
You can keep him. I don't want
no
it.
me gusta. Like, no thanks.
And Francis is so great because he knows that he's been in this house for so long, right? That he's like, I will get you and your cousin out, but I cannot go with you, right? This house is not going to allow me to go. And
Noemi doesn't care.
Yeah, Noemi's like, excuse me, no, this is a hellscape. You're getting out. And so the day comes, right, where Howard is meant to take over
Virgil's body.
Take over Virgil's body, right? And Noemi, when Virgil comes in to take over as groom, hits him with something. And so he is, like, unconscious, out of it. And so when the time comes, they're like, okay, well, Francis is here, right? And she's like, no, 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 absolutely not. Catalina, they have been keeping her a lot more drugged, so that she and Noemi cannot plot together as cousins do. And Catalina ends up stabbing Howard in the
Howard
eye with a
a lot.
scalpel. Yeah, she really goes
Yeah.
ham, you
She
know?
goes ham.
And I respect her for it. And so that all happens, right? Florence is in there and Francis ends up killing his mom, which
It's sort of an
traumatic,
accident.
but
She has a gun
yeah,
and
she has
he's
a
trying
gun.
to protect Noemi,
Yeah. And
and it just
he shoots
they
her.
both reached for the gun.
Yeah,
You know.
they reached. And so that ends up happening, right? And so they're all getting out of the house because Howard is obviously in no state to do anything.
Mhm.
And so they're like, yeah, we can get out. They go through a secret tunnel, right?
Secret
And
tunnel.
mhm.
Sorry, couldn't help
No, you're
myself.
cool. It's the lighthearted moment we needed. They go through a tunnel and she ends up seeing the body of Agnes.
Agnes,
And we
who
find
we
out
discover is
the power
when
source.
yes,
She is the
when
battery.
she is declared as mother, it is because she is like keeping this whole thing going. Like
Yeah,
it is invaded. It is
it's gross.
like
It's once
it's
again
growing from
mushrooms bad.
her. Mm,
Yeah. And
mm,
and so they're like, okay, we just need to get out of here and then we will like either walk all the way down or, whatever the plan is. And lo and behold, Virgil's still alive. He shows up and ends up becoming a fight, right? As it
yes.
is. And
Hmm.
Francis and him are fighting. Francis is quickly coming to bat, right, for Noemi. He's like, I've already done this. I've already done these things. I might as well go and beat the crap out of my cousin because he's being really icky. And Noemi, to help, realizes that if she destroys Agnes, if she destroys Mother,
Yes. It
everything
destroys all of it. Yeah.
everything gets broken down. And so she lights it on fire, right? Burns it down. And this obviously affects Francis too. And he's like, you have to leave me. And she's like, no, you silly man. And so
No,
all
that's
three of
her
them,
emotional support twink. She
yeah.
can't just leave him.
And so all three of them manage to get out, right? And we end up seeing them in, I don't know if it was Martha's house or the
I think it was the
doctor's,
doctor's house, I
someone's
believe.
house after all of this, right? And Catalina and Noemi have basically woken up. They've been able to,
It's been a few
it's
days.
been a few days. They've been okay because they didn't have that such a tight connection because both of them by that point had been taking that tincture pretty
Yes.
often because of Francis. But Francis, obviously born and raised and never leaving that house, it was going to take a lot more for him. And when he wakes up, I think it's a really sweet scene because he's
It's a really
like, are
sweet.
you sure I'm not going to end up like them? Are you sure? Stuff like that. And she was like, we will come back and burn it down again if it becomes a
Yeah.
problem. I am not afraid of this anymore. And it's very touching. In my head, they are together forever because I just,
Now, again,
like,
emotional support twink.
yeah. And they have their first kiss, or well, not their first kiss, but their first real kiss, the first kiss that they both choose.
Yes.
And it ends,
Although to be fair, am I wrong? Didn't Francis ask
yeah,
her, "Can I kiss you?" after they got married? So like technically speaking, technically, it was like their second kiss. Cuz she could have said no and he would have respected that because Francis, is not Virgil. He's very respectful of her agency and, her choices and her body and all
yeah,
of
but I
that.
think
So,
even if he said no, the family would not have let it not happen. And so
you think so?
yeah, I think it would have been that or like somebody else would have stepped in. Like Virgil would have been
Oh,
like,
maybe.
"Well,
Yeah. I'll do it.
yeah." And so I think of it as their first kiss because the circumstances and everything was something that they chose.
Mhm.
And it's super super sweet. I've got a couple questions though now that we've dived in, gone through the
Mhm.
things. We sort of talked about this, right? But it's really confusing to me as to how Noemi's dad, who sends her into this because he knows that something is awry with that house,
Mhm.
right? And she is sending letters and she's updating him and stuff like that. How he does not think it odd, I guess, when some time passes before she can send another letter. But I guess like 1950s, he was probably just like, oh, letters take
He's
a
like,
while.
she's not
Yeah.
messing around with Hugo. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Like,
The priorities, you know, he did not think evil mushrooms. No one would think
no,
evil mushrooms.
no.
Um, so I like that. I did really like the doctor. I was almost
Mhm.
worried for a second that he was gonna somehow be bad. Like I was worried that he was on the payroll somehow. Um, what's up? Why are you making that face at me?
Well, no, because uh, from all the Silvia Moreno-Garcia I've read, like that's not usually.
Mm.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But in all of SMG's books that I've read, there's like
Mm. Mm.
clear
Good versus
lines as
bad.
to who's good and bad.
Yeah.
Like
Um, overall, I really enjoyed this one. Originally, I think I said I enjoyed it more than Silver Nitrate.
yes, you did.
I don't think that's true.
No.
No, upon reflecting, I still think my rankings go Silver Nitrate, Mexican Gothic, and then
Mhm.
Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which will be spoken about in another video.
Mhm.
I think what makes it different and what brings it down a little is just how gross this one is.
I love it.
Yeah, there were points where I was like, ooh, guys.
Yeah.
Uh
Like just
there's also a point where when she goes into Virgil's room, he has like a giant painting of his father just hanging by his bed,
mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And like, mm-mm,
Like,
mm-mm.
ma'am, who hurt you to write books like this?
The
Like
red flags,
that's
guys.
that's what I want to know. Who hurt you
Um,
so bad? Was it the patriarchy, white supremacy? Like
yeah,
those are some
those are some heavy
very
topics, you know. I
heavy topics
I was
in her books.
yeah, because I think like Silver Nitrate was like Nazis and white supremacy, and then this one was eugenics
And
and
eugenics though. There
oh
was
yeah,
some there was some eugenics
yeah.
in silver nitrate. Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I just really liked the magic elements. This one was a lot more, it read a lot more like a gothic, like sci-fi
Yes.
type, which like sci-fi has just never really been my cup of tea. Um,
I really need you to read Gods of Jade and Shadow then. If
working
you
on.
dig the magic.
And yeah, I think overall,
And Certain Dark Things. Oh my god, Certain Dark Things. It's my second favorite. My second favorite
it
Silvia
was really
Moreno
fun.
Garcia book.
I liked having a protagonist that was interesting.
I want to see what I to this day don't know why people didn't like the book. And now I feel the need to um now I feel the need to dig into it, find out why
Sure.
people didn't like it. Oh, I love when I Google Mexican Gothic dislike and the first thing that pops up is a Reddit post that says, I don't understand the hate for Mexican Gothic. Same, bro. Same. Same. I guess people had very high expectations, but it's very Lovecraftian. It's
Yeah,
very
but I think not everybody is a Lovecraft girly.
that's fair.
You know, some people make interesting choices and they don't like Lovecraft.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I also thought Mexican Gothic was overrated. Take my opinion with a grain of salt. Don't usually read horror. But the 1950s Mexican setting intrigued me. None of that flavor really came through in the book, though. That being said, I liked Noemi as a character, and I liked it enough to seek out other non-horror books by the author. Um, First of all, I don't know how the flavor of 1950s Mexico didn't come through the book when I see. This is when does sexism and patriarchy just not exist in your world? Because that was right there in your face the entire book.
I think they might mean benefit of the doubt to the reviewer. Maybe they mean like something that makes 1950s Mexico different than like other places. You know?
But, like, was it all that different from other places?
I don't
You
know.
still had to deal with men in positions of power thinking that they were cool
Able to do
cats.
whatever.
They could do whatever they
Cool cats is
wanted.
crazy, Kayla.
Well, I wanted to say something else, but I'm trying to be more PG. Like, and the dads controlling their daughters' lives,
Yeah.
which then led to husbands controlling their wives. Like, what differences were you expecting
But I
exactly? I
think
would
they
like to know.
also you I don't know. If I'm reading a review of a specific genre and that person immediately starts it off by saying they do not usually read that genre, I do just take it with a grain of salt. And Kayla, you're not taking it with a grain of salt.
No, I'm not. I don't.
I warned
Anytime
you.
somebody's like, take this with a grain of salt, like, I'm gonna take it with a whole container of salt, and you're just gonna
Yeah.
have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
I
okay.
don't know. I don't know why people didn't like it. I feel like my confusion about the dislike of Mexican Gothic matches with your annoyance with people not liking Lore of the Wilds. Is like, why?
Yep. Yep.
Like, why? Why don't you like it?
It
If
begs the
you read
question.
Mexican Gothic and you didn't like it, can you please tell me why? I'm gonna 100% judge you for it, but like, I'll probably be nice. No, I probably won't be. That's a lie. We're not lying on Beyonce's internet, but like, explain it to me like I'm 5. I need to know.
She needs to know, guys. So, this has been another episode of Margin Mavens. We thank you for being here. We appreciate each and every single one of you. We will catch you in the next video.